Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and today I have on such an amazing guest. I'm so excited. Deb Krier is an entrepreneur, cancer advocate, and the visionary behind tryingnottodie.LIVE. With a background in communications, marketing, and public relations, she's navigated diverse roles from spearheading communication strategies for large corporations, small companies, and nonprofit organizations to founding her own marketing agency over 20 years ago. Diagnosed with stage 4 triple positive breast cancer in 2015 and thyroid cancer in 2023, she founded tryingnottodie.LIVE in 2022. As a dynamic advocate and speaker, Deb passionately champions resilience, empowerment, and community building amid adversity, inspiring others to navigate the complexities of cancer with courage and power. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you. You know, it's always interesting when we hear our own bios, right? We're like, ooh.
Hey, you know, you're the first one that's actually sent me one, so I'm usually coming up with the stuff on the fly. So thank you very much for sending me that, so I didn't have to. So honestly, like reading that bio, you are really all that the Many Faces of Cancer podcast is about. It's really about inspiring others, helping people to feel less lonely, less alone in their cancer journey, and just being a voice of hope and perseverance. So I am so excited to dive into your story. So you talked in your little bio about what you do. So you live in Atlanta right now, right?
I do. You know, and it's so funny because, of course, we know each other from when I was in Denver.
Yep, absolutely. How long have you been in Atlanta now?
2012.
Wow.
I know. It's like, oh my gosh, it's been forever, it seems like.
I went to chiropractic school in Atlanta, so I lived there for 5 years before we moved out here. I lived in Smyrna.
I'm not far from Smyrna. I'm just south of Smyrna, so.
Okay. Are you inside of 485?
I am out, so I'm outside the Beltway.
Okay.
So outside the Beltway, north of 20. So.
Okay. All right. Oh, so you're a little bit further
I'm a little further west. Yeah.
Than Smyrna. Okay, because I'm like, Smyrna's right outside the Beltway, so you must be like on the side.
It's grown a bit, but
Yeah, I'm sure it has. All right, so take us on a little journey of your story. You said you were diagnosed in 2015.
I was.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, you know, how that all came about. Were you having symptoms? Was it just screening?
Annual checkup.
What?
Went for my annual checkup, had my mammogram, and you know, I've always been very diligent about all of that. Aside from anything else, I used to work for the American Cancer Society there in Colorado, and I worked for an oncologist in Denver. And so I've always been very diligent about making sure I did all my annual checkups and all of those things. And so I went in, you know, expecting, like we all expect, nothing, right? I was not even home before they called and said, hey, this is the mammography center. We need you to come back.
Wow.
Now, I knew that was not, oops, the machine became unplugged. There was a problem. And so I went back. Of course, they can't tell you, anything, which is, that's fine. But, so I had my mammogram, and it had been my primary care doc who had ordered it, right? Because it was just part of my annual checkup. And he called several days later and said, well, there's a problem. And he was a doctor who, not long after that, I fired, decided didn't need to go to him anymore because he didn't want to see me. He just wanted to refer me out. And so he referred me to a breast surgeon. So I immediately got real, scared, and discovered that what I had was called microcalcifications. So no lump, no bump, no anything real obvious. And these microcalcifications are smaller than grains of salt. The computer saw it. And so that was interesting. But of course, I go to Dr. Google, right, which is what we all do. Oh. And so I put it in there and discovered that almost every woman of a certain age gets those. Just happens as your body changes and the hormones change in your body. And the vast majority of the time, it's not a problem. But in, about 5% of the cases, it is considered at least pre-cancer. So the diagnosis was stage 0, nothing to get real overexcited about. So, I took my time making appointments, nothing that was too big a deal. Saw the breast surgeon. She wasn't overly excited either. We did a couple really fun, icky biopsies, and those came back negative. So again, not anything we were worried about. But then the decision was, let's go ahead and do the surgery to pull lymph nodes on the left side and just make sure that everything was okay. So I go in, had the surgery, and they discovered that 8 of 12 lymph nodes that they looked at were positive. So not only did I have breast cancer, it had spread already. It had spread to my lymph nodes.
But still wasn't really visible on a mammogram.
No. But yeah, it was just, and these little speckly specks. I mean, it's these strange little things. But yeah, they were making their way through my body, and so then it was like, oh dear, we need to do something more. And so then at that point, they sent me to the oncologist, and went to her. She very much said, okay, we need to start chemo, and we need to start it now, and it needs to be pretty massive doses, because these little things are throughout your body. Even though they're, tiny, what happens is they start coalescing and forming the tumors. So threw the kitchen sink at it. I had 8 different drugs in one day. Discovered that Jimmy John's delivers to the treatment center, right? Because I was there over lunch, and I was like, "Hello, hungry," because I'm like this all the time, this chatterbox yammer yammer, right? And so went several days, felt fine, and then started feeling kind of bleh. But I thought I had 8 different drugs. They were chemo drugs. These are nasty, horrible. I should feel bleh. And so, went another day, and then thought, oh, no, this is not right. I had pain that was unbelievable, to the point of we're 5 minutes from the hospital, and I told my husband, you got to call an ambulance. We can't drive there. And part of it was upstairs, how do you get down the stairs and all those things. The very cute fireman came, and they have this thing that takes you down the stairs. It's the funnest little carnival ride in the world. And
you don't ever want to have to need.
I know.
Yeah.
And so, I'm in the ambulance, and I still am just chatter with them. And I remember we stopped. And I said, why are we stopping? And they said, well, it's a stoplight. I said, I don't get lights and sirens. And that is literally the last thing I remember for hours, because at that point, the world dropped out. So what had happened was I got a complication from one of the drugs. We're not quite sure which one. We got some pretty good suspicions as to which one, but and this happens less than 1% of the time. You know me, I have to be special.
Absolutely.
And so, and so what this complication did several things in my body, but I ended up in septic shock, which is
Bad.
Bad. I remember hearing the doctors talk about how fast I was going to die that day, as in hours. And I really do remember thinking, excuse me, I get a vote in this. And so went in for emergency surgery that lasted many, many hours. And obviously I ignored them when they said I wasn't going to make it, but I ended up being in the hospital for about 7 weeks because I kept having multiple complications. I mean, it was in and out of ICU, in and out of surgeries. I mean, one surgery was so long that the surgeon actually had to call in somebody else because he could not stand any longer. And so, of course, I find all of this out much later, but, finally was well enough to go home. Was home for several weeks, and of course it was like, okay, well, we don't do chemo again. That wasn't going to be good. But so then it was like, okay, I'm going to have a double mastectomy. And I had decided that at my age, I just wanted the surgery. I was not going to mess with reconstruction, all of those various things. Had that surgery as an outpatient. Partially because they didn't want me back in the hospital. They knew that it could be bad. I caught several of the big bugs that you get in hospitals. I mean, all sorts of things. And so they wanted me home. And we are so close. I mean, we're 5 minutes away. And they thought, okay, this is fine. Got a complication several days later from that, and ended up back in the hospital. It was a complication that doctor had never seen before because, again, I'm special. And so
They're gonna write books about you.
I know, special child, right?
Right.
And and then things started really improving, right? We did try chemo again, just because the thought process was, we got to do as much as we can. Now, one of the things that I always tell people is, whatever treatment you are doing, it has to be your decision, and if you need second opinions, if you need to talk about alternative, whether it's alternative treatment or alternative types of care, all these various things, it's your decision. You need to do that. So tried the chemo again, same exact reaction. Back in the hospital I go. And luckily that time it was only for 7 days. And, and it was like, really? But this whole time I'm working, right? I tell people, I need internet to work. That's all I need. And hospitals have really good Wi-Fi. And so, I just kept working. So then, things really did kind of continue on the upswing. Multiple complications from septic shock. I mean, there are things that my body will just never get over. It's done quite the number on my kidneys. And who knows at some point what's going to happen with that. But just going merrily along, working, doing everything. Because I was not able to have chemo, and I am what's known as HER2 positive, they like to give you a drug for that. And that we knew was safe. And so I kept taking that, and I'm still taking that. It's an infusion. I go in every 21 days. I have a port in my shoulder. They hook me up. I sit there for 30 minutes. I jibber jabber with them, and I'm done. Now, the typical protocol for that is a year, because that drug is incredibly hard on your body. Doesn't seem to affect me at all, besides make me tired. I do have to have an echo, because what it does is it damages your heart. So I have an echo every 6 months. Those numbers, knock on wood, have not changed since the first day. So I just keep going to have that treatment. And what that does is it stops cancer cells from growing so rapidly in your body. And people are either HER2 positive or HER2 negative. Just kind of one of those things. And so, just was going merrily along, going in for my treatments, working, going on vacation, living my life, doing all those things. And about this time last year, I was in at my doctor's office. Now, I did have skin cancer, so that was fun. That was actually cancer number 2, but it was basal cell, and, and that was it.
Well, compared to what you'd gone through.
I know. And it was so funny because the poor dermatologist, he was so sweet. I did not tell him all this other stuff. Because it's like it didn't pertain, and he and I were just joking and laughing and carrying on until he got the biopsy, and it said, basal cell carcinoma. Then he's Mr. Serious Doctor. And it was so cute and so sweet, because now here's what, you don't need to be concerned, and this is never malignant. And then I finally said, no. I said, what you don't know is I'm stage 4 breast cancer. I said, this is not a big deal. And so we go back to laughing and joking, right? So last year about this time, I went into the doctor and I said, I got a pain. And they all hit the panic button. And I'm like, no, not that type of pain. And I said, it happens when I sit at my computer too long. I get on the bad side. It feels like something's grabbing and pinching in there. And I said, so I think we're probably talking scar tissue or something like that. And they said, oh, yeah, this is, and they said, but we've not been able to do a CAT scan on you in a while because there hasn't been a reason. So now on the little form, we can put pain. I go in, I have the CAT scan. That was this whole big ordeal because, CAT scans are these giant, huge machines, right? Mm-hmm. I had to go to a different hospital than I'm used to have it. They sent me to 4 different places in that hospital. And I'm like, don't y'all know where your CAT scans are? It was like, and when I finally found it, I said, you guys are like hidden down here. So I had the CAT scan. Whatever's in my arm really is just scar tissue, so nothing to be concerned about. But that was when they said there are lesions on your thyroid. So, ultrasound, biopsies, and the doctor called. When the doctor calls, it's never a good thing. Mm. And I answered the phone, and she said, yeah, it is papillary thyroid cancer. And I said words that we can't say on the air. And she laughed and she said, that's why you'll do just fine. More than anything, I was annoyed. I was like, seriously? And so, I said, okay, now I have to have my surgeon. I have my own surgeon, right? Because I've had so many surgeries. And I said, I'll only do this if he can do this because, I would walk on fire for this man. And they said, oh yeah, you'll do that. And then, within a week almost, I was in the hospital. I didn't even get to meet the specialist, the endocrinologist, because his appointments were booked, and we were like, yeah, right, whatever. And so I go in, they take out my thyroid. They discovered 2 tumors, but they were teeny, itsy bitsy little things that had not been causing a problem at all. There was no way to know these were there except for that CAT scan. And so, had my thyroid out, or thyroid gland out, no further treatment aside from the medicine you have to take, till the day you die because you need your thyroid. And, so that was number 3. And it is a totally new cancer. It is not metastatic. It is not a secondary. It is totally new. So I was like, okay, I'm just cancer girl. But yeah, it's been a heck of a ride.
Wow.
I know. It's like, right. I need a glass of water
honestly,
after
the
that.
fact that you are laughing and joking about it, and I know that's, you have to. Like if you don't
Right.
laugh, sometimes you'll just curl up
You'll
in a
cry.
ball and cry, forever. But and that was going to be my question if it was the metastasis of
Right.
breast cancer.
Yeah,
but
because
I
that
know,
was my, yeah.
yeah,
And
breast cancer doesn't usually go to the thyroid.
Right.
It goes to
well, and he
of
said
course, places.
thyroid is always a primary. He said it's never a secondary. And then he asked a couple questions that then we kind of went, well, duh. My aunt had thyroid cancer. And then he said, did you have radiation? And I did have radiation. And of course, it would have gone up into that area. And he said, we probably should have been checking this a little bit sooner. Gee, you think?
But no radiation or anything needed from.
No, from the thyroid, nothing. No.
Okay.
No.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
it was so, it was caught so early. That was the thing. But one of the things I was like, ugh, now I'm gonna have a scar that shows because all of my other scars don't show. And just to kind of, people are like, yeah, you've gone through this
turtlenecks all the time, right?
I know. Well, you can't. They were so pleased with themselves. They said, we'll put it in one of your wrinkles so it doesn't show.
Thank you.
And I went, thanks. Thank you. And they did. It is in one of my wrinkles. And so it was like, yeah, right. But that surgical procedure was number 33 in this whole time span. So yeah, when I laugh about scars, my scars literally have scars.
So tell me a little, so you had all of these surgeries from septic shock. What were they doing in all of these surgeries? They weren't taking things out other
They
than
did.
the sepsis.
I'm kind of hollow. So part of what happened was, so they did need to remove a section of my colon, and that was what had gotten septic. And so they took out a piece of that. I was very lucky that I didn't even have to have a temporary ostomy. They were able to just glue me back together. I duct tape, glue, chewing gum, something. I don't know what all I'm stuck together with. But then we did have, had a further obstruction, and about half of my primary digestive tract had to be removed. It just died. It didn't get enough whatever it's supposed to get, blood, and it died. I also, one of the times when the doctor was in there, he took out my appendix. He was so pleased with himself. It was the funniest thing. And I'm like, you were on the other side. And he said, but in a lot of cases, when you start doing all of this with your colon and your bowel and your intestine and all that, it will cause the appendix. And he said, so I just took it out. I went, okay. Later on, I kept whining that I had this other pain. And they had to remove my gallbladder. So yeah, I'm hollow. You know,
I
you
was
go,
just going to ask, what do you have left in there?
I know. You know, and it's. I told people, I said it's a very strange diet. You know, because you lose a lot of weight when all of that is gone.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, so other than all of that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how are you feeling today?
I'm good.
Because I mean, you do have
Yeah.
metastatic breast cancer.
I do, and you always, that's always in the back of your head, right? That it's going to be there. Now, you know, because I had a double mastectomy, that did, you know, kind of, but yeah, I mean, at some point, more than likely, it will crop back up again. So that's part of why I continue the treatment. I do take an oral cancer medication that I will take for another 2 years. Normally you take it for 5, but they started having a lot of recurrence around year 7, so they just said, nope, we're going to give it to you for 10. And it actually has kind of some weird side effects. Its biggest side effect is chronic joint pain.
Is this the tamoxifen?
Actually, because I'm older, I
Oh.
take letrozole.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's the
Aromatase
same
inhibitor.
thing for
Yeah.
those whose, you know, ovaries have stopped working.
Right.
You know, I was like, oh, I went through menopause and didn't know it. That was kind of funny. Yeah, so I take letrozole, and it does cause bone pain and causes osteoporosis. So I do, because it somehow leaches the calcium back out. But you know, it's kind of like you get this to do this, you know, and so, but yeah, you know, it's I need a nap usually every day. Maybe that's just because I need a nap. You know, there are the chronic issues that I deal with all the time. My kidneys are not happy. And, you know, and who knows, I've had surgery 4 times for kidneys, on my kidneys. And probably needing another. And I'm just like, we're going to ignore that for a while. But, because the anesthesia, I mean, I've had so much anesthesia that I feel that it really affects my brain. Each time I'm under, it takes me a lot longer to get going again. You know, it's like the old commercial used to say, this is your brain on drugs. You know, I've just had far too much anesthesia, so I put it off as much as I possibly can. But yeah, I mean, you know, it really, there's not, considering everything,
Right.
there's not really, you know, a lot that I can whine too much about. You know, and so yeah, I get tired, but yeah, I am of a certain age.
And you're still running your business.
I am, yeah. And it's going very well. I love it. Doing volunteer stuff. And then I did start tryingnottodie.LIVE. So it's kind of like,
Let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me,
you
tell me
know,
the
it
impetus
was,
of that and what you do with it.
yeah, you know, it is a passion project, right? And so I have this absolutely fabulous business coach. Her name is Kathleen Caldwell. And we were talking, you know, business stuff. And we were on Zoom. And she knows about all of my complicated backstory and all of those things. And she shook her finger at me, and I thought, oh dear, I've done something. And she said, you know, you have not gone through everything you went through without using it to help others. And I said, yeah, but I don't want to be cancer girl. You know? And I mean, doctors call me in to talk to students. They call me in to talk to new patients. You know, if somebody's getting a port and they don't know what it looks like, and I'm there, I show them the port. I mean, all sorts of things. But I thought about it. I thought, you know, maybe this is part of why I went through all of this, is how can I help others? And the name came about in 2 different ways. The first was that my mom came out from Kansas when I was so sick. You know, I am an only child and was literally on death's door. And so she came out, and there was one of the times in the hospital where somebody came in, they did something, and they left. And I got the disapproving mother face. And I went, what? And she said, you did not say thank you. And I said, oh, for God's sakes, I'm trying to not die here. You know? But then, you know, later on, after talking with Kathleen and you know, and it was like, you know, that is so true. When we have something like this, we get so focused on trying to not die that we forget that we need to live. And so, you know, I'm a marketing person. I go to get tryingnottodie.com and it's taken. How rude. And, you know, and of course, GoDaddy or whoever I was looking at suggests other things, and it suggested .live. And I was like, well, duh. You know,
I didn't even know
I am a
that
marketing
was the
person.
thing.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, that was it. And so we do, you know, we launched a couple years ago. It is something where we help with people who have cancer. Now, anything we talk about, I mean, any illness, you know, it pertains to. But we work with those who have cancer in a lot of ways to show them that they're not alone. It was interesting. I was listening to some of your other programs, and that's kind of one of the universal themes, right? That we feel very isolated. We feel very alone. And I mean, we are the only ones going through this. And even those who have the same diagnosis are going to have totally different. I mean, like, yeah, this reaction I had less than 1% of the time happens to people. So, you know, we are very alone. And so part of what we work with people on is that, and I tell people, I am not a cancer patient. I'm not even really a cancer survivor. I just don't like those terms. I'm a cancer warrior because we are in the fight for our life. And, you know, and somewhere at the start of this process, somebody told me this saying, and it says, you know, fate says to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. And the warrior responds, I am the storm. And so I had warrior tattooed on my arm.
Love
you know,
that.
our logo is a warrior. And then we talk about how important it is to build your tribe of the people who are going to support you. You know, I fired 3 doctors through this process. They were good doctors, just not clicking with me, right? And then we also work with people who contact me and they say, my mother, my sister, my coworker, my friend were diagnosed and I don't know what to do. And typically what happens, and you probably experience this too, is people don't know what to say or what to do, so they don't do anything. And we think they don't love us. And, you know, it's, and I had people that said, we didn't know what to do. I said, you know, Hallmark has cards. You know? And really, I mean, I have
Or
all of those
text that
cards.
says, thinking of you, and a, you know, a heart emoji or something.
Yeah. You know, and so, and then we also work with medical people. You know, how can they work with us as the warriors better? You know, how can they really help us through this? You know, it was funny when I went in for one of my checkups, I was the thyroid cancer in room 4, and I went out and I said,
That's name.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, HIPAA applies and all those various things, but I said, I am not my diagnosis. And I think that's the big thing is we are people. We're not patients. And I tell them, how would you, if this was your mother, your sister, your beloved, your friend, how would you want them treated? And, you know, and frequently the students look at me like, whoa, nobody's ever said that to us before. And so that's kind of how we started tryingnottodie.LIVE.
I love it. And you also have a Facebook group.
We
as
do.
well, along these
You know,
lines.
and it is a private group, and it's only a private group simply because we don't want, shall we call them the snake oil salesmen? You know, and you probably had this experience too with people who were going to cure you. You know, and I always thank them. I mean, they meant well. But I did tell one person when she nipped at me one too many times that, you know, she had the cure for me. I said, I'm sorry. If you had the cure for cancer, you wouldn't be selling it out of the trunk of your car.
You'd be a billionaire.
I know, you know, and but she really did mean well. But yeah, so we do, and on the website, tryingnottodie.live, is the link to the Facebook group.
Okay.
And so, you know, and it is a place, it's a safe place for people to share. And we have people who are active treatment. We have people who had cancer 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We have caregivers. And we do have medical people that are in there also from a variety. I mean, like one of the people we have is someone who does yoga and meditation and, you know, things like that. So it's just a great place for people to share their thoughts. And as we were saying before, to not feel so alone.
So speaking of not feeling alone, so obviously you had your husband. Did you have other, you know, family, friends, a support structure? You know, one of the common themes that I've seen in these interviews is the importance of having
Oh,
a support system so you
yeah.
don't feel so
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah. My husband was behind me 120%. And he went through, I can't even imagine, what he went through because he was told 3 separate times that I was not going to make it. And, and he had to make that phone call to my mom and say, you could get here in 10 minutes and it might not be time. And she had to fly in. I mean, can you imagine being the parent? And yeah.
No.
And so my mom did come out. She came out and stayed for 4.5 months. That
Wow.
was a little long. When she started rearranging my kitchen, I'm like, no, you're going home now. But I'd had complication after complication after complication, and she just was not going to leave her baby, and we finally just shooed her away. But and then her sister at that point was a practicing nurse practitioner. She has now retired, but she came out several times, and that was invaluable because she spoke that language and she could translate to us. I also had several absolutely wonderful friends who stayed with me. The nice thing was I was never alone when I was in the hospital. Somebody was there with me because I had this network. And I think that really did make a difference, both for me and then the staff. I mean, the staff knew, hey, there's somebody that's with her. We can work on our other patients, which I think was great. But it was hard because you don't want to impose on people. You don't want to bother them. And we do think, I'm tough, I'm brave, I can do this. No, we need to let people help us when they want to help.
And I think people want to help and they just like you were saying, they just don't know how or they don't know what to do. And I love, and I don't know if it was on your Facebook page or not, but it was like things that as the patient you can say, like, hey, instead of, oh, if there's anything I can do, well, actually, you can, bring me food, or you can tell me.
Because if somebody says, hey, Melissa, just tell me if you need something.
Right.
Your brain can't, for one thing, we don't want to intrude. We don't want to do that. But if I were to say, Melissa, can I bring you dinner on Thursday? You're going to go yes or no, right? And do things like that. We had somebody who said, do your dogs need to go for shots? And they did. I mean, and I had people who came and walked me because I needed to get out and do that. And my husband had gone back to work and we had shooed mom away. And so, I had friends who came and would spend 15, 20 minutes taking me for a walk. But I was able to tell them, this is what I need. And then they could say yes or no. But I think that's one of the biggest things is we don't know what to ask, but be specific. If somebody has small kids, hey, can I take your kids for a day? Can I take them to a movie? Do they need to go school shopping? Can I come watch a movie with you? And if you do something, take a book because they might fall asleep. And so it was really funny. I had somebody that brought me lunch and I thought, oh, this is fabulous. And then she told me how much I owed her.
Oh my gosh.
It was, like $10, and I was just, oh, okay. But yeah, be specific, both when you need something and when you're offering something.
Yeah. And those are some really great tips for people who may be listening who have a friend going through cancer, so they can say, can I do this for you versus, hey, whatever you need. To me, I just wanted company.
Right.
Or I wanted somebody to go for a walk with me. So it, and I love the saying that says, your presence is the present.
Right.
Like, my husband was able to cook. He was able to do all of that. It's like, I just wanted company and I wanted to go for a walk and somebody to go, with me. So it's like, is there anything I can do? Yes. Come on over or let's go for a walk or something. Cause that was what mine was stage 1. It was a quick lumpectomy.
But it's still
it was not a big thing.
One of the scariest things you will ever go through.
Right. Exactly. So those are great tips. And I think that's like a perfect way to close this out is, be of service to the people in your life who need it. And if you're going through this, be specific. not just, oh, it's okay.
Right.
You know, I don't really need anything, or I'll let you know. It's like, no, I need you to come and like do a load of laundry for me. You know?
Right. And people will do that.
Yeah. They want to help. They just don't know how.
Yep.
And so being specific and don't feel like you're an imposition to someone going through this, or, you know, to other people, like they want to help. So let them
Right.
help you. And it feels good for both of you.
Somebody told me honor them by accepting their help.
Ooh. I love that too. All right. So where can people find you? Obviously, tryingnottodie.LIVE. I think that's supposed to be .live, but
No.
I like live better. Yeah.
Live. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So they can go to the website, and I think there's something on the website that they can contact you.
They can contact me. They can join the Facebook group. Yep. There's lots of resources, and we're always adding more.
Awesome. And then, so just to kind of close it out, is there any one thing that, not that you tell everyone, but like just one quick piece of advice for anybody going through cancer right now that was helpful to you?
You are the one in charge. You know, do what you need to do and what you feel is best for you.
I love that. And fire your doctor if they don't agree. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Deb.
I'm
really
so honored.
appreciate
I
it.
love this.
I enjoyed the laughs, and your story is just so powerful and
Well,
so
thank you.
inspirational, and I really appreciate your time. So have a wonderful rest of your day.